What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. The brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack.
God, Cam's such a fucking retard. What's up, guys? I'm back. Took a few days off. It's a rough time of the year for me, but I'm back now, and got court in the morning. Going to make somebody look fucking dumb, and then I think as long as court clears up tomorrow, we should be able to release the manifesto. I think I'm gonna do it on Patreon, like a Patreon show on it, and then maybe release it later to everybody else. Because I need to get some Patreon content now that shit's fucking finally settling down. God damn. It's been a rough go at life lately. Let's get it.
Hey daddies, it's me, the Linda Binda from TikTok. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to thank you for watching Cold Beer Confessionals with Will Bird. I think that's just incredible. I've watched a few episodes and I'm just like very intrigued. But you know what I'm most intrigued in is Big Daddy's meat stick. I heard that it's very thick, like a good old German sausage. You know, Linda and her coochie loves that. Oh, never mind. Let's not go there. Anyways, I hope you have a good show and enjoy it as you can. There's a lot of weird things that go on, especially when it comes from the realm of Linda Bindaland. So, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Welcome everybody. I'm Will Bird. This is Cold Beer Confessional. Thank you for joining us. I'm back. Took a couple days off. We had Valentine's Day on Friday. I wasn't here, and then my birthday was Saturday. Celebrated that, and then tough time of the year. My dad's birthday was yesterday. He passed away last year. Anyways, his birthday was Saturday, and then back today. So we're back with you. I got a few things to cover. I'm not going to be on super late just because I got court in the morning, but going to make Kyle look fucking dumb, and then we'll be right back here. So going to court in the morning to talk about that. Got to meet the lawyer and do the thing. Hopefully the kids have school. We've had some winter weather, so they were on they're out of snow days, so they were like online. They were on a 2-hour delay, but even that was online. So there's a 2-hour delay online. So hopefully they go to school tomorrow so we can go to court. We'll see. But other than that, thank you for the birthday wishes. I saw a bunch of them, people posting and melon shit. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, let's start out here. This is what you're up against.
Believe Trump put a 200-foot statue of Jesus on the White House. They believe Trump put a 200-foot statue of Jesus on the White House.
Did you hear about the 200-foot Jesus statue that Trump had delivered and set at the White House? It has Jesus standing there with outstretched arms.
They believe Trump put a 200-foot Jesus statue on top of the White House.
Mama saw a blurry image of a 200-foot statue of Jesus being hoisted onto the White House and thought, oh yes, this must be real. Donald Trump, my godly warrior, definitely did this. And then instead of taking 3 seconds to Google the accuracy of that, you whip out your phone and made that whole video. Jennifer, I need you to be so
putting Jesus and God back in his place.
for real with me right now. When is the last time you fact checked anything? You know what really gets me? Y'all scream fake news at everything. Science, history, the weather report. But the moment
The weather
something tickles
report.
your little MAGA heart, zero critical thinking. Oh, wow. A 200-foot statue of Jesus. This must be real because I want it to be. And this is why media literacy is in shambles, because people like you believe anything that makes Trump look like some anointed prophet. Meanwhile, the man has never been in a church unless the cameras are rolling. He held a Bible upside down, like he was disappointed there weren't pictures in it. On Inauguration Day, he couldn't even be bothered to put his hand on the Bible. But sure, he commissioned a 200-foot Jesus to be placed on the White House. No one saw it being built, no city ordinances, no permits, just one day, bam,
Well, there's that live stream of the White House.
massive Messiah right there on Pennsylvania Avenue. Y'all need to start questioning things before embarrassing yourself on the internet. Because otherwise you end up here, getting
Thank you.
clowned on, while the rest of us are trying to figure out how it is there are people like you who vote.
So I thought maybe this was like an outlier. No, it's a pretty big deal. It's being shared everywhere. Amazing statue of Jesus Christ, arms wide open and 200 feet tall, being placed at the White House grounds by President Donald Trump. Wow. And we end up with this video. It started on TikTok. At Spectacular Shots. There it is. Look how tall it is on top of the White House. Look how tall it is on top of the White House.
In God our Father, I believe in Christ the Son.
And then if you go to the comments, there is a note on it now, but there wasn't earlier. 200. Here it is, right here. 200-foot Jesus statue unveiled on White House lawn. There you go. Where did you see this at? I just went to the White House live cam, and I don't see anything. There it is, the article. 200-foot Jesus statue unveiled on what they don't realize. They're using Google to justify this, and they're Google linking to a fucking TikTok video. I did see the guy trying to argue that he was pardoned, so it should apply to everything. Not true. Love webcams prove this. Link to the article. Me, who voted for all of it. Leftist when Trump does a new thing. Amen, they say. Amen. What's wrong with this country? Everybody tried to take God out of it. Well, we're going to bring him back. Let me get this one. Jesus came as a Lamb of God to take away the sin of the world, and he's coming back as a Lion of Judah to take us home. He's the cloud lion. Is this really happening? And then there's, on top of that, here's another post. Oh my God, is that playing still? There's another post. This is why I trust and respect Donald Trump and Melania Trump. 200-foot statue of Jesus Christ is being erected in the White House lawn. America worships Jesus Christ. Bring Jesus back into our lives. America will change to a nation that honors and glorifies Jesus Christ. When you fear God, you fear nothing in this world, only Jesus. And then we have this, this clearly fake photo, okay? Look at this photo. We need Jesus here's the comments. We need Jesus in America. Perhaps this is prophetic and it will come to pass in some form. God is on the move, sister. It would be nice if it was true. Winking face. I looked it up, Joshua. Unfortunately, it's not true. We'll make it true. Everyone agrees that this is a wonderful idea. Maybe Trump and Melania had this all in the plan, all in the works. They planned it out.
Just resubscribed for 31 months.
Thank you for the resubscription.
Loving the content.
Trump will listen to the people, and we'll put one up there. White House has been a den of demons. It is about time we bring statue of Jesus on it. This person is not from America. This is like a Russian bot. I think this picture in the video on TikTok is a win-win for all. The fake images are a win for all. What, they seriously believe this is happening. This is not a drill. They believe it's happening. They believe that Trump put a 200-foot Jesus statue up on the White House, on top of it, on top of the White House. The next two things are a lot more serious. So if you don't know about this, but you live in one of these states, you might want to contact some of your representatives. So this is Texas, Alaska, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, and West Virginia. So what is this? These states have filed in federal court. And what they're filing for, they claim to be filing for, is that when Biden was in office, Section 504, okay? Section 504 provides that you cannot discriminate against anybody based on their disability if you get federal dollars, okay? If you get federal money, you cannot violate against anybody with a disability, okay? That's what Section 504 is. When they filed this, they're literally lying about it, okay? They're literally lying about it. They're claiming that the Biden administration this is true. The Biden administration put in a rule that said gender dysphoria, right? That your mind doesn't match up with your body parts, basically, is a disability. And they've added that to the protected disabilities. So if someone has the mind of a man or the body of a woman, or the mind of a woman but the body of a man, you can't discriminate against them either. You can't discriminate against them either. That's true. This is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, I think. Anyways, they added that. And that includes that's all disabilities. So all disabilities are in this category. And the Biden administration put gender dysphoria in as one of those disabilities. Now, if you accept federal dollars, you cannot violate against them. Now, what these states are claiming is, and their attorney generals are claiming, is like, hey, we're just trying to remove the Biden gender dysphoria bullshit. If there's no such thing as trans, then you male or woman, we're trying to remove this. And I know there's some people that are going to be like, hell yeah, that sounds good. Those people have mental illnesses, which is a disability. I don't even understand the argument. But there are people that are cheering this on. I'm not, personally, but there are people that are cheering this on that don't understand how much this is going to affect everyone. Because in their own paperwork, they're trying to get it ruled unconstitutional, okay? And in their own paperwork, where it says demand for relief, Section D says declare Section 504 unconstitutional. So what would happen if they declare Section 504 unconstitutional? That takes away protections for any disability and every disability. These attorney generals are literally going on the news saying, I would never back anything that remove protections for people with disabilities. But they are. They're demanding that it be declared unconstitutional. Issue a permanent injunctive relief against defendants enjoining them from enforcing Section 504. They're not just going after, I don't care what you think about fucking trans people. They're not just going after the gender dysphoria part. They're going after it all of Section 504. Here is South Carolina's Attorney General.
General says nothing will be changing for students and parents relying on Section 504 accommodations in school. Attorney General Alan Wilson's office says Section 504 is a law protecting school accommodations for children with disabilities, such as ADHD.
It's not just schools, it's anywhere that takes federal dollars, but schools is a big one.
Diabetes. Under the Biden administration, an executive order added gender identity disorders to the law. President Trump recently signed his own order to remove gender identity from Section 504. Wilson providing a statement saying, quote, my grandfather was wounded.
And they're either so fucking retarded they didn't read their own documents, or they're lying, one of the two, because it doesn't say declare the gender identity issues null and void in Section 504. It says declare Section 504 unconstitutional. Issue permanent or injunctive relief. That means the court says we never have to enforce Section 504, and that covers everybody. That's not just gender dysphoria. 504 is what protects everybody that's disabled, including disabled kids at school. But he's going to lie about it and say, my grandfather was wounded in World War II, and he spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair. There's no way I would ever do anything to take away accommodations for anyone with a disability. But their actual filing is asking for that. I don't know if they filed it wrong, if they're lying to people, if they didn't read it, but you can read it in plain text. It says, declare Section 504, this 29 U.S.C. 794, this is just how you look it up, unconstitutional. This is the entire Section 504. And even if you're like, oh, well, maybe 29 U.S.C. 794 is just about gender dysphoria, issue permanent injunctive relief against defendants enjoining them from enforcing Section 504. This is going after everything. Every protection that disabled students or anybody else has that goes to a place that receives federal funding.
Wounded in World War II, spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair, so there's no way I would ever do anything to take away accommodations for anyone with a disability.
It's not just me saying this, by the way. I'll show you a lawyer who did who's went over the same documents. I think I can show you. If I go to profile and then a video I reposted. Here you go.
You should be horrified by this. These 17 states are suing the United States government to try to get rid of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which prohibits people with disabilities from being discriminated against in schools and hospitals. They also won't stop lying to you about it, and I'll get to that. But first, let's talk about...
I think the biggest thing that the right wing's done is convinced you that you need to be worried about these fringe social issues, right? Like, it's so wild. The culture war shit. Like, they're fucking over farmers right now, and they're more worried about trans athletes. Like, they're destroying the economy. They're hedging us on the side of where every other world leader is against us. And they're like, yeah, but trans people need to use a different bathroom. Who gives a fuck about this 0.00001% of the population? Who cares? We're destroying everything else.
talk about what Section 504 is. Section 504 says if you get money from the United States government, you can't discriminate against people with disabilities, and it sets forth rules that you have to follow to be compliant.
Schools, doctors and nurses, websites, doctors again. A lot of it has to do with like hospitals and doctors, and schools are the two big ones.
So, for example, schools must include students with disabilities and help them learn. So if you have a child who's on an IEP, that's a Section 504 protection. Doctors and schools must have sign language interpreters. Websites have to be able to work for people who are blind or have low vision. You can't just stop helping somebody because they have a disability. So these
And they're asking for it all to be removed. She's going to go over this. It would be one thing if they were like, okay, like Trump's trying to do. Trump is trying to remove the gender dysphoria part out of Section 504. That's one thing. You could still be mad about that. But now they're coming after everything. They're coming after everything. Every protection that a disabled student has is trying to be removed all across the United States by these 17 states or 14 states or whatever it is.
17 states are asking the court to declare that Section 504 is unconstitutional. And the impetus for this was that in 2024, the Biden administration added gender dysphoria to the definition of disability protected by Section 504. So these 17 states were like, no. So the first part of their lawsuit is them asking the court to get rid of that rule. But they go further than that. They ask the court to declare that Section 504 in its entirety is unconstitutional. So this has got a whole lot of people really upset and worried, right? So what do these attorneys general do? Do they withdraw from the lawsuit? No. Do they amend the complaint? No. They're like, let's just lie. Arkansas's Attorney General Tim Griffin, the lawsuit does not seek to end Section 504.
The lawsuit, so this is the Arkansas, says the lawsuit does not seek to end Section 504 outright. But I just showed you that's exactly what they're asking for. That's exactly what they're asking for. This is what we're talking about. I'll read the text of it. It says, promulgation of rules and regulations. No otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States, as defined in Section 705(20) of this title, shall solely be reason of her or his disability be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance, or under any program or activity conducted by any executive agency or by the United States Postal Services. The head of each such agency shall promulgate such regulations as may be necessary to carry out the amendments to this section made by the Rehabilitation, Comprehensive Services and Development Disabilities Act of 1978. Copies of any proposed regulations shall be submitted to appropriate authorizing committees of the Congress, and such regulation may take effect no earlier than the 19th day after the date on which such regulation is so submitted to such committees. It's not about gender. It's not about trans. It's not about dysphoria. It's about every fucking disability that exists in schools and hospitals mostly, but anywhere that gets federal grants. Okay? Program or activity means a department, agency, or special purpose district or otherwise instrumentality of the state or of a local government. It's not just federal policies either. It's local governments as well. The entity of such state and local government that distributes such assistance in each department or agency and each other state or local government entity to which the assistance is extended in the case of assistance to a state or local government. A college, university, post-secondary institution, or public system of higher education, a local education agency, system of career and technical education, or other school system. Like, it's coming after everything, and the attorney generals of these states are lying about it, saying, hey, we're not going after people with disabilities. We're just talking about trans issues. They're not. They've literally asked for the opposite.
Outright. South Carolina's Attorney General Alan Wilson said, there's no way I would ever do anything to take away accommodations for anyone with a disability. Except for this, which he definitely would do because he has. South Dakota's Attorney General pull on the same nonsense. Okay, so one of two things must be true, right? Either these states' attorneys general are ignorant as to the contents of their own litigation, highly concerning, or they are lying to you about the contents of their own litigation. Highly concerning. I'm the feminist lawyer. Follow me if you enjoy.
It literally says declare unconstitutional. Declare Section 504 unconstitutional. Like, everybody should be fucking pissed about this. But because they've put it under the guise of we're taking care of some trans stuff, they're like, hell yeah, I hate trans people or whatever. But this is every disability. Every disability. They're going after. They're not removing the trans from it. They're not removing gender dysphoria from it. They're going after it all. All of it. To where they don't have to enforce Section 504. So if you have a child or any child that has a disability and is in schools, they're saying we don't have to provide care for them to make it just like they don't have a disability. Shit is fucking wild. Wild. Up next. What we got next? Who knows? Do you guys know what the Saturday Night Massacre was? Okay? If you're young like me still, I'll give you a refresher. So the Saturday Night Massacre was the resignations over from the Justice Department over Special Prosecutor Cox, Archibald Cox, in the Department of Justice because of the Watergate scandal. Okay? So after the Watergate scandal, Richard Nixon went to the guy who was investigating it, a special prosecutor, and wanted him to drop the subpoena for the tapes. Okay? He went to him and said, hey, I know you want the Watergate tapes. I want you to drop the subpoena. Right? He refused. He refused. He doesn't have to. He's special prosecutor, right? He's a special prosecutor. That's his job. He's supposed to look into this. He refused. So, Nixon, the president at the time, ordered the attorney general to fire him. Says, hey, he won't drop his subpoena. I'm ordering you, my attorney general, to fire him. But the attorney general refused and resigned, effective immediately. So then Nixon turns to the deputy attorney general, William Ruckelshaus, and tells him to fire Cox. He also refuses and resigns. Then he goes to the third most senior, this is the president, goes to the third most senior official at the Justice Department, who is the Solicitor General, Robert Bork, and tells him to fire Cox. Bork actually did it, okay? He stated that he intended to resign afterwards, but was persuaded by Richardson and Ruckelshaus to stay on for the good of the Justice Department. So, this is unprecedented. The president going and telling a prosecutor, drop this. We're done. Don't do it. Right? It's obviously some type of favoritism and playing not by the rules. Right? We're going to tell them and drop it. Now, the political and public reactions to Nixon's actions were negative and highly damaging to the president. Literally, this is what caused the impeachment of Nixon. This is what, obviously, the Watergate scandal was huge, but then the fact that he's trying to fight it by way of going around people and having them fired kicked all this off. The impeachment process against Nixon started 10 days later. And they literally pointed to this and said, even if Watergate wasn't as bad, look at what he's doing now. They had United States District Judge Jessel ruled that the dismissal had been illegal. The Saturday Night Massacre marked the turning point of the Watergate scandal as the public, while increasingly uncertain about Nixon's actions in Watergate. So Nixon just tried to confuse people with what actually happened at Watergate, right? Was he involved? Was he not involved? Did he know the people? Did he not know the people? Whatever. They were incensed by Nixon's seemingly blatant attempt to end the investigation, while Congress, having largely taken a wait-and-see policy regarding Nixon's role in the scandal, quickly turned on Nixon and initiated impeachment proceedings that would end in Nixon's resignation. Okay, this is a huge deal. So Watergate, Congress was like, hey, we'll just have to let the investigation go. We got investigation go. We got a special prosecutor. But now he's trying to fire the prosecutor that's looking into this. And people are resigning en masse because they're like, no, I'm not going to. This is the same thing when Trump tried to illegally send out that the Justice Department had found significant evidence of voter fraud in the 2020 election. And they're like, if you do that, we're going to resign. We're going to resign. This guy's going to resign. Trump wanted to put some guy that was like 19th down on the chain of command in the Justice Department as the head of it because he was willing to send the email, right? He was an environmental attorney. Everybody else said they'd resign. But what's even worse that people aren't paying attention to is what's going on right now with the mayor of New York. It's even worse than the Saturday Night Massacre. Some say by orders of magnitude. Worse than Watergate. This will go down as the Thursday Night Massacre. Now, pay attention to this video. This is crazy. They're literally holding Adams, trying to get his charges dropped so they can hold him above his head and work him like a fucking puppet. Because he went and begged Trump to take away this investigation. But they don't want to dismiss with prejudice. No, because that would mean he was safe and he could do whatever he wanted. They want to dismiss without prejudice, so anytime he fucks up, they can bring this charges back against him again. In fact, Trump's border czar said this on Fox News. He says, well, if the mayor doesn't do exactly what we want, I'll be up here in a few weeks looking and saying, hey, what about those charges we didn't bring? This is illegal as fuck. This is crazy. Let's watch the Legal Eagle.
This is arguably worse than Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre. Open corruption is on full display at the Department of Justice. Because acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Beauvais III appears to have brokered a backroom deal with New York City Mayor Eric Adams, helped push Trump's immigration.
They even say in the document you'll see in just a second, this has nothing to do with the evidence, the investigation that went on, or the fact that they basically know that he committed these crimes. That's all great. This is because we want him to help Trump.
Agenda, and the feds will kill the corruption case against you. A classic quid pro quo.
Help with Trump's immigration agenda, and we'll drop the case against you.
But when Beauvais ordered U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon to file a motion to dismiss, she refused and instead resigned. Her letter to Attorney General...
We've had as many as 6... So the Nixon one, the Saturday Night Massacre, had 2 people resign. Okay? 2 people resign. 1 person finally did it. We've had as many as 6 resign now, I think.
Pam Bondi set off a mass exodus that will probably be remembered as the Thursday Night Massacre. And when Sassoon quit, Beauvais demanded some other attorney do his dirty work.
I don't know how long you guys plan on living, but this one day will be in history books. It has to be.
No one stepped up. And one by one, they chose the door instead. As one said in his resignation letter, quote, I expect you'll find someone foolish or cowardly enough to file your motion, but it was never going to be me.
By the way, the first one to resign or offer their resignation if they wanted to, if they want to continue pushing this, is a devout Republican. This isn't a bunch of lefty, blue-haired, lunatic fucking prosecutors, George Soros, whatever conspiracy you think it is. She's a devout Republican and Federalist. Like she served under I can't remember which one, but like super right-wing fucking Supreme Court justice. They're conservative, super Republican attorneys.
At the time of this recording, at least 7 prosecutors have resigned in protest. Desperate, Beauvais and Bondi forced the remaining members of the Public Integrity Unit, or PIN, into a room, Squid Game style, and gave them 1 hour to pick who would eventually carry out the...
Scalia. Thank you. That was right. Then they took the rest of the prosecutors into a room and told them one of them was going to drop the charges, or they were all fired. A direct arm of the President of the United States took all the prosecutors into a room and said, somebody's dropping this or you're all fired. They said, Why doesn't Trump just pardon him? And they said, no. That would look too much like this is special quid pro quo.
Would all be fired en masse. This is so much worse than Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre. Now, why do I say that? Well, because we've been here before. On October 20th, 1973, President Richard Nixon tried to fire Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, who was investigating the Watergate affair. Cox had subpoenaed Nixon's secret Oval Office recordings, which contained crucial evidence of White House misconduct. Nixon refused to comply and instead offered a compromise. A summary of the tapes prepared by Democratic Senator John Stennis.
So they wanted the full tapes so they could review them. He said, no, I'll give you a summary of the tapes.
A Nixon ally who was basically deaf. Cox rejected that offer, insisting on the full tapes instead. In response, Nixon ordered Attorney General Elliot Richardson.
I know there's a lot of stuff that's like scary or gray area or can he even do this? Can he not do that? A court's going to rule against this. This right here is fully illegal. He cannot do this. And people are just looking the other way.
To
They're worried about trans kids being able to attend school.
Richardson refused and resigned in protest. Nixon then ordered Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus to fire Cox, but he too refused and resigned. And finally, Solicitor General Robert Bork, who had then become the acting Attorney General, complied with Nixon's demand and fired Cox. Now, that was only a few months before Nixon resigned. And at the time, this was a historic presidency-ending scandal. But
by the way, Trump tweeted out, one who saves America. I want the actual. He who saves his country violates no law. Trump is blatantly saying because he thinks he's saving the country, he cannot be violating a law.
what a difference 50 years makes. As we talked about,
I think it's supposedly a quote from Napoleon, but it doesn't matter. He's fucking tweeted out.
Last year, a federal grand jury indicted New York City Mayor Eric Adams for accepting bribes, wire fraud, soliciting campaign contributions from foreign nationals, and conspiracy. The indictment alleges that Adams and his staff...
By the way, federal prosecutors don't bring a case this large without fucking evidence. They've got the evidence, right? They usually err on the side, especially with like a well-known person in the public eye, they usually err on the side of like, if we don't have a slam dunk case, we're not fucking bringing it. They have the case here. Even Trump's own administration admits that this has no bearing on the evidence or the investigation or anything like that. This is all political.
Received hundreds of thousands of dollars in free flights and hotels from the Turkish government, and alleges that Adams used straw donors to bypass federal campaign finance laws and misused the New York City public matching fund system to receive over $10 million in public funds for his 2021 mayoral campaign. The government alleges that in return, Adams gave political favors, such as overruling the New York City Fire Department's determination that the new Turkish consular building was unsafe. The FDNY found 60 violations.
He literally took a bunch of money from Turkey because the Turkish consulate building couldn't open because it was unsafe due to fire regulations, and had that overruled after receiving a donation from Turkey.
That needed to be handled before the skyscraper could open to the public. And according to the indictment, Adams intervened, and the FDNY officer who made the recommendations was told he would be fired if he didn't acquiesce, and the, quote, skyscraper opened as requested by the...
Told him he would be fired if he did not give him this approval.
Turkish official. And in December, prosecutors notified the court that they discovered more illegal conduct by Adams, including destruction of evidence, and that they would probably file...
So his aides are not in this deal. So his aides, that in their own indictment, were directed to destroy evidence, and they did. They're still being prosecuted for destroying this evidence. He told them to. They did it. They're still being prosecuted. This is only for him, because he can help Trump.
File a superseding indictment to that effect. Now, reporting indicates that Acting Attorney General Beauvais didn't care about any of this. He set out to make a deal with Adams that would please Trump and sought to use the criminal allegations to their advantage. Note that Beauvais worked diligently on the January 6 prosecutions before leaving the DOJ and defending Trump. Now, Mayor Adams did not resign when he was indicted, and it seems that he determined that his best chance of political and personal survival was to cozy up to Trump. And to that effect, Adams' lawyers are William Burke and Alex Spiro. Spiro also represents Elon Musk, and Burke recently became an ethics advisor to Trump's private companies. Now, shortly after Trump took office, lawyers for Adams apparently asked Trump to pardon the mayor. But instead of a pardon, they got a call from Emile Beauvais. And until recently, Beauvais was one of...
So they asked for a pardon, but they know how bad that'll look. Not that this looks any better. This doesn't look any better, but you can't pin it on Trump signing something, right?
Trump's many criminal defense lawyers. Trump nominated Beauvais as the Principal Assistant Deputy Attorney General, or PADG, which does not require Senate confirmation. He is currently acting Deputy Attorney General, while Trump's other personal attorney, Todd Blanche, goes through the confirmation process. For 2 years...
Yeah, Anders Breivik or something like that. The Norway mass shooter.
It's reported Beauvais was one of 2 chiefs of the Terrorism and International Narcotics Unit in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office.
That's right.
It was reputedly a disaster. A judge slammed Beauvais for, quote, grave derelictions of prosecutorial responsibility and identified, quote, systemic prosecutorial misconduct in a case involving alleged evasion of sanctions. The judge said the prosecution was, quote, marred by repeated failures to disclose exculpatory evidence. As we've talked about before, the failure to disclose exculpatory evidence, generally known as a Brady violation, is a serious ethical breach and can result in convictions being overturned. And that's what happened when Beauvais and the team of prosecutors he supervised prosecuted a defendant who had been convicted on several counts of evading sanctions against Iran. Prosecutors asked the court to vacate the jury verdict. Then District Court Judge Allison Nathan blamed the co-chief, saying, quote, the supervising unit chiefs appear to have offered little in the way of supervision. And Beauvais left the Justice Department shortly after the case went sideways. But in stunning allegations...
So that's Beauvais. He's still waiting. He's the guy who's handing all this down, but... he's Trump's guy.
Here, the New York Times reported that Beauvais essentially coached the mayor's defense team on what talking points to use ahead of time and got them on board with the unorthodox immigration policies.
Beauvais coached the lawyers for the person he's part of the group prosecuting them. Could you imagine if you found out that there's this big fucking murder, right? Like O.J. Simpson. Could you imagine if you found out that the Attorney General went and met with O.J. Simpson's lawyers and told them how to pitch the case to make it more successful that he gets off, or more likely that he gets away with it?
For no prosecution plan. That led to a meeting between Beauvais, the defense team, and acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Danielle Sassoon, the prosecutor who had
She is the first one to say, no, I'm not doing this.
Inherited the case. Now, during that meeting, Beauvais allegedly steered the conversation to how the changes hurt the mayor's ability to fight illegal immigration in New York City. Beauvais also wanted to know whether it hurt the mayor's re-election prospects.
When I'm under investigation for smuggling drugs across state lines, it affects my ability to go to work. Do you think prosecutors give a fuck about that? When I get a DUI, it affects my ability to fucking drive my kids to school. You think prosecutors give a fuck about that? Of course, when he's under investigation, it affects him being able to be mayor. Fucking resign. Or push through it, one of the two.
Which, yes, it should hurt one's re-election prospects if you are alleged to have engaged in abject criminality. But as we'll discuss in a second, U.S. Attorney Sassoon summarized what went down here. Quote, I attended a meeting on January 31st, 2025 with Mr. Beauvais, Adams' counsel, and members of my office. Adams' attorneys repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to assist with the department's enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. Mr. Beauvais admonished a member of my team who took notes during that meeting and directed the collection of those notes at the meeting's conclusion.
It's almost like they're trying to hide something. Why the fuck? Notes should be taken at any meeting like this. Every time I meet with a lawyer, I take notes. Every time I meet with the police, I fucking take notes. Why would he collect the notes? Why would they collect the notes?
Now, admittedly, it's not usually the lawyers who engage in the Stringer Bell defense.
Is you taking notes on a criminal fucking conspiracy?
Now, Beauvais has subsequently admitted that he told someone to confiscate the notes, but said
he admitted to it. He admitted to it. And he claims the reason that we took the notes and destroyed them is to prevent a leak. Notes don't prevent a leak. Someone can literally just go say, we had this meeting, this happened. You're not fucking Men in Black mind flashing people.
that it was in the name of preventing leaks, which is weird because the existence of notes have no bearing on whether someone leaks the content of a meeting or not. Notes are merely a record of what happened.
Is you taking notes on a criminal fucking conspiracy?
I guess the answer was yes. And a few days after that meeting, Beauvais ordered acting U.S. Attorney Sassoon to drop all charges against New York City.
A few days after the meeting, when his lawyers argued exactly what Beauvais told him to argue, that he couldn't help Trump with his immigration policy if he was under investigation, she was ordered to drop the charges against him.
Mayor Eric Adams, and issued a public memorandum to that effect. Now, amazingly, Beauvais' memorandum explaining his rationale says it has absolutely nothing to do with the, quote, strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based, which are
nothing to do with case law, nothing to do with the theories, nothing to do with the evidence, nothing to do with the investigation. This is all political.
Issues on which we defer to the U.S. Attorney's Office at this time. That alone was basically unprecedented and stunning. But at the time, Beauvais had no criticism of Sassoon or her staff. In fact, he told her, quote, this directive in no way calls into question the integrity and efforts of the line prosecutors responsible for the case or your efforts in leading those prosecutors in connection with a matter you inherited. So why on earth would Beauvais want to dismiss this case? Well, facially, he questioned the actions of former U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, which Beauvais said, quote, threatened the integrity of the proceedings, including by increasing the prejudicial pretrial publicity that risks impacting potential witnesses and the jury pool. Now, we'll talk about those allegations in a second. And according to Beauvais, quote, it cannot be ignored that Mayor Adams criticized the prior administration's immigration policies before the charges were filed. Now, Beauvais' memorandum explicitly says it doesn't question that the prosecutors had enough evidence to bring these charges before a grand jury or that there was enough evidence to win the case. And the memo also doesn't mention the other 3 criminal cases filed against Adams' aides, which rely on much of the same evidence cited in the Adams indictment. Additionally, Beauvais' second reason for seeking dismissal is that the, quote, pending prosecution has unduly restricted Mayor Adams' ability to devote full attention and resources to the illegal immigration and violent crime that escalated under the policies of the prior administration. We are particularly concerned about the impact of the prosecution on Mayor Adams' ability to support critical ongoing federal efforts as described in Executive Order 14165.1.
Literally saying he shouldn't be prosecuted because Trump has this immigration plan and we want him to do it.
Now, in a way, it's helpful that they are so incompetent and that they say the quiet part out loud. This rationale doesn't make any sense. Adams isn't the only person capable of handling important security issues in New York.
They found a stooge to drop it. The last line of defense we have right now is the judge.
City, but also, yeah, being engaged in and being indicted for unrelated corruption will hamper your efforts to be the mayor. So Beauvais ordered Sassoon to file a motion for leave to dismiss, but nothing appeared on the docket. Now, at the time of this memo, anyone who read it knew that something corrupt was going on because the motion sought to ask the judge to dismiss the case without prejudice. A dismissal without prejudice means the case is dismissed, but the government has the right.
So basically, they can bring the case back at any time. They will literally have this guy in their pocket. Right? At any time, he doesn't do exactly what Trump asks, then suddenly the charges come back. And fucking the goddamn retarded border czar that's running around with Dr. Phil says it on Fox News. On a broadcast on Fox News says, well, if he doesn't start cooperating with us and things don't change around here, we'll just go back to those charges we dropped. You're saying it on Fox News. It's bribery and blackmail.
To refile charges in the future. Well, on the other hand, a dismissal with prejudice permanently ends the case, preventing the government from prosecuting the defendant on those charges ever again. Now, if you thought the process was tainted, you would either cure the infirmity, which, as we'll talk about, is what Sassoon wanted to do, or you dismiss with prejudice so the prosecution is done. But in this case, dismissal with prejudice allows the administration to hold future prosecution over the head of Mayor Adams. Tom Homan, Trump's border czar, even admitted this in a joint appearance with Adams on Fox News.
Listen to this. Tom Homan admits it, that if he doesn't do what we want, we're bringing the charges back.
If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on a couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to?
If he doesn't do what we want him to do, we'll be back here saying, hey, where's this agreement we had? Now, you can't really blame that guy. He's a fucking retard, right? him and fucking Trump are fighting for last place in the IQ Olympics in this administration. But he said it.
Yes, so funny. So if the charges are dismissed without prejudice, the Trump administration can hold future prosecution over the head of Eric Adams like the sword of Damocles and get him to do what they want. So in response, a few days later, acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Danielle Sassoon, submitted her conditional resignation to Attorney General Pam Bondi, quitting in protest of the...
Now, it isn't exactly, it's a conditional resignation. So, like, if you want to continue with this, then this will serve as my resignation, but I'm not doing that.
To dismiss the Adams case. Now, Sassoon is a prosecutor who's probably best known for her cross-examination of Sam Bankman-Fried during his fraud case. Now, Sassoon has deep conservative roots, having clerked for Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia and Brett Kavanaugh when he was a member of the D.C. Circuit. She's also a member of the Federalist Society. But 3 weeks ago, she was handpicked by the Trump administration to take over as acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, while Jay Clayton, Trump's pick to run the SDNY, went through the confirmation process. And she's 8 months pregnant right now, so you can bet she doesn't need this crap right now. Now, Clayton previously created his own mini Saturday Night Massacre. You might recall in 2020, Bill Barr tried to fire then U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman, who was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and replace him with Clayton, who was the head of the SEC at the time. Berman refused because Clayton had no experience as a U.S. attorney or as a prosecutor. So it's fun, we get to relive that. Okay, one scandal at a time. Now, U.S. attorneys take 2 oaths upon assuming office. The first is the constitutional oath taken by all federal employees. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that
it's just wild that this is... No one's fucking standing up to this.
Will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter, so help me God. Second, here, Sassoon took a jurisdictional oath as a member of the New York State Bar. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of attorney and counselor at law according to the best of my ability. But Sassoon informed Attorney General Pam Bondi that, quote, I cannot credibly represent the government before the courts if I seek to dismiss the Adams case on this record.
She's saying, I cannot do this. I cannot do this in this way because it violates everything about this. This is clearly quid pro quo.
So let's hear from Sassoon in her own words about what happened and why. Quote, on February 10th, 2025, I received a memorandum from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emile Beauvais directing me to dismiss the indictment against Mayor Eric Adams without prejudice subject to certain conditions, which would require leave of court. When I took my oath of office 3 weeks ago, I vowed to well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I was about to enter. Sassoon said her oath as a U.S. attorney includes making, quote, only good faith arguments and not using the, quote, criminal enforcement authority of the United States to achieve political objectives or other improper aims. And that was exactly what Beauvais was doing. He admitted as such. Beauvais cited 2 reasons for dismissing the Adams case, none of which had anything to do with criminal justice. First, because the mayor promised to enforce Trump's immigration priorities in New York City, and second, because Beauvais claimed that former U.S. Attorney Damian Williams weaponized the Department of Justice. Now, Beauvais did not deny that there was substantial evidence that Eric Adams committed crimes, and yet, quote, Mr. Beauvais appears prepared to concede that Adams should receive leniency for federal crimes solely because he occupies an important public position and can use that position to assist in the administration's policy priority.
Literally, he should receive leniency against these federal crimes because he can help out the administration.
Federal prosecutors may not consider potential defendants' political associations, activities, or beliefs. See Waite versus United States, politically motivated prosecutions violate the Constitution. If a criminal prosecution cannot be used to punish political activity, it likewise cannot be used to induce or coerce such activity. Threatening criminal prosecution, even to gain an advantage in civil litigation, is considered misconduct for an attorney. See, for example, DC Bar Ethics Opinion 339, ABA Criminal Justice Standard 3-1.6, quote, a prosecutor should not use other improper considerations such as partisan or political personal considerations in exercising prosecutorial discretion. Sassoon then quoted Pam Bondi to Pam Bondi, quote,
She quotes her. The Department of Justice will not tolerate abuses of the criminal justice process. This is what she said. This is what Pam Bondi said in a press conference. The Department of Justice will not tolerate abuses of the criminal justice process, coercive behavior, or other forms of misconduct.
In your words, the Department of Justice will not tolerate abuses of the criminal justice process, coercive behavior, or other forms of misconduct. Dismissal of the indictment for no other reason than to influence Adams's mayoral decision-making would be all 3. This is a classic quid pro quo. Quote, Adams's advocacy should be called out for what it is, an improper offer of immigration enforcement assistance in exchange for a dismissal of his case.
Now, Adams knows this. It's not like he's just fucking sitting there not knowing what. He went to Mar-a-Lago to beg for this, to kiss the ring and get rid of this.
Although Mr. Beauvais disclaimed any intention to exchange leniency in this case for Adams's assistance in enforcing federal law, that is the nature of the bargain laid bare in Mr. Beauvais' memo. That is especially so given Mr. Beauvais' comparison to the Bout prisoner exchange, which was quite expressly a quid pro quo, but one carried out by the White House and not the prosecutors in charge of Bout's case. Now, I probably don't
So he speaks about a prisoner exchange. You understand that two sovereign nations that don't fall under each other's laws are different than not prosecuting somebody to get them to help you out with your political motives.
Now, I probably don't need to tell you, it is extraordinary for a U.S. attorney to accuse the third highest ranking lawyer in the Justice Department of entering into a quid pro quo deal of this nature. But Beauvais himself compared the quid pro quo between Trump and Adams to the deal between Russia and the United States to release notorious Russian arms dealer Victor Bout in return for American gold medalist Brittany Griner. Sassoon called that analogy particularly alarming. That prisoner swap was an exchange of official acts between separate sovereigns, the United States and Russia, neither of which had any claim that the other should obey its laws. By contrast, Adams is an American citizen and a local elected official who is seeking a personal benefit, immunity from federal laws to which he is undoubtedly subject. In exchange for act enforcement of federal law, he has no right to refuse.
It wouldn't be nearly as bad if they would have sided, like, if they would have tried to play it up like the evidence wasn't great, that they believed it was weaponized, and they wanted it dismissed with prejudice. So it cannot be brought back. But now they're just going to have this to hold over his head, that any times he doesn't do what Trump says, oh, well, the prosecution's back on, and they literally admit it.
Now, I would compare this to another Russian deal, the one where President Trump tried to solicit a bribe from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky by refusing to send congressionally appropriated military aid to Ukraine unless he did him a favor of finding or fabricating dirt on his political rival, Joe Biden. Now, since it's been in the news so much, I will remind you that too was an act of impoundment that the president had no authority over. But admittedly, in some sense, this is a little different because with the Ukraine blackmail, it was purely for Trump's personal interest, where here it goes to effectuate political goals. But that's not how criminal prosecutions work. You are not supposed to withhold prosecution against a murderer, for example, just because they agree with you about, I don't know, vaccine mandates.
Hey guys,
or
it's
something.
Will.
And there is also one tiny reason why you don't offer a politician a personal benefit, like dismissing criminal charges on the condition that they perform or not perform an official duty. There's a technical term for it. It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh, bribery. If Mayor Adams has discretion in the performance of the actions, there is a colorable argument that Beauvais attempted or successfully bribed him to perform his official acts. Now, the counter-argument is that the Trump administration was simply giving him a personal benefit to induce him to perform actions that he was otherwise required to perform, though that goes back to problem number one. But on these facts, I don't know. I hope Beauvais doesn't want to see any Broadway shows anytime soon. I'm just kidding. Hamilton is obviously going to be shut down as DEI. But Beauvais' second rationale,
Hamilton's DEI.
Former U.S. Attorney Damon Williams, who's a Democrat, weaponized the Department of Justice against Mayor Adams, obviously another Democrat. This was a talking point of Adams that Beauvais adopted, and Mayor Adams played this up for Tucker Carlson in late January of 2025, just as negotiations between his lawyers and Beauvais were heating up. Adams' lawyer Spiro had filed papers with the court a few weeks back that the prosecution should be dropped because U.S. Attorney Williams, who had already left the Department of Justice at this point, wrote an op-ed about how New York was in crisis. Now, the judge, Judge Ho, rejected Adams' argument, finding that the op-ed referred mainly to the problems with New York State and
That's already been addressed, right? That's already been addressed. The judge has already addressed this.
The op-ed only made an oblique reference to ethical problems, which did not name Adams specifically, did not contain any opinions on Adams' guilt, and did not go beyond the public record.
It didn't even mention him. Just said there was problems with corruption, that the state, that they were in crisis. That was it.
Sassoon pushed back on the allegations about Williams' motivations and actions. Quote, "If anything, I have learned that Mr. Williams' role in the investigation and oversight of this case was even more minimal than I had assumed. The investigation began before Mr. Williams took office. He did not manage the day-to-day investigation, and the charges in this case were recommended or approved by 4 experienced career prosecutors, the chiefs of the SDNY Public Corruption Unit, and career prosecutors at the Public Integrity Section of the Justice Department. Mr. Williams' decision to ratify the recommendations does not taint the charging decision. And notably, Adams has not brought a vindictive or selective prosecution motion, nor would one be successful." And Sassoon criticized Beauvais' assertion that the prosecution was timed to hurt the mayor's chances at re-election. Adams was indicted 9 months before the Democratic primary, and similar timing occurred in corruption charges against Senator Bob Menendez, convicted, and Representative Duncan Hunter, convicted and then pardoned by Trump. Now, Sassoon said that Adams chose the timing of his trial and that he could have delayed it until after the primary. He chose before, even though he knew, quote, the burden trial preparation would place on his ability to govern the city or campaign for re-election. But that is his choice, and the district.
So you can't say this argument can't be made about the election because Adams, the guy who's in the trial, right? He's the guy who's being accused of all this, decided to have this trial before the primary. He picked it. District
Court has made clear that Adams is free to seek a continuance.
he's free to seek a continuance.
The parties therefore cannot argue with candor that dismissing serious charges before an election, but holding open the possibility that those charges could be reinstated if Adams were reelected, would now be other than clearly contrary to the manifest public interest. I'm not aware of any instance in which the department has concluded that an indictment brought this far in advance of an election is improper because it may be pending during an electoral cycle, let alone that a validly returned and factually supported.
You could just make this argument all the time, right? You just make this argument all the time. I'm planning for running re-election in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years.
An indictment should be dismissed on that basis. And Sassoon explained that her office was preparing new charges against Adams, which would have been done long after former U.S. Attorney Williams had left. Quote, "We have proposed a superseding indictment that would add an obstruction conspiracy count based on evidence that Adams destroyed and instructed others to destroy evidence and provide false information to the FBI, and that would add further factual allegations regarding his participation in a fraudulent straw donor scheme." And in our video on Adams, we talked about the probable destruction of evidence by several of the mayor's associates. Mohammed Bahi, one of the mayor's aides, is already facing
a straw donor. A straw donor is where the money comes from somewhere else. But like, let's say that my local sheriff is getting money from the cartel, but the cartel gives me the money. And then I say, oh, I live in this town and I want this sheriff to be elected. That's straw. Not only did he use straw donations, but he used a matching system they have in New York to get even more. So fraudulent donations came in and he had those matched by the city.
Drawing evidence. Now, not surprisingly, Adams consented to a dismissal without prejudice, which means the department could refile a criminal case later. Sassoon claimed that Beauvais negotiated this deal without informing her office, and the offer is dangerous and corrupt. She suggested that the judge may not even grant the motion to dismiss. Quote, "Adams's consent would not guarantee a successful motion given the basic flaws of the stated rationales for dismissal." Basically, she is waving a red flag saying that Judge Ho should make an inquiry into this dismissal. And Sassoon said that Beauvais' order requires her to violate her ethical law.
I think he ought to. I think the judge ought to put these motherfuckers under oath and get it down on paper. Even if he eventually grants it, yeah, he ought to put it down on paper.
Obligations. Quote, "Because I do not see any good faith basis for the proposed position, I cannot make such arguments consistent with my duty of candor." And she's probably right. Ethical duties prohibit a lawyer from taking positions that are contrary to law or outside the bounds of reasonable advocacy. Sassoon closed the letter by asking Bondi for a meeting. Quote, "In the event you are unwilling to meet or reconsider the directive in light of the problems raised by Mr. Beauvais' memo, I am prepared to offer my resignation."
So that's why I was conditional. So if you don't want to have a meeting and you don't want to reconsider the directive in light of all these problems, I'll just submit my resignation.
It has been and continues to be my honor to serve as a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Now, I wanted to take a step back and get a gut check on this outrageous behavior. So I asked former AUSA Mitchell Epner for his thoughts on the magnitude of Sassoon's letter about Beauvais.
Thanks, Devin. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to speak about this. I am speaking
former federal prosecutor, New York attorney.
On my own behalf, and I am speaking as a former federal prosecutor. When I became a federal prosecutor, the mantra that was drilled into me was that we needed to act without fear or favor, meaning that we needed to act without fear of the personal consequences, and we needed to act without favor or disfavor to any potential defendant on the basis of who they were or how powerful they were. That is the mantra of the Department of Justice. That is something that Danielle Sassoon picked up in her truly amazing letter to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, explaining why she could not go along with moving to dismiss the charges against Mayor Adams. That letter is one of the most courageous things that I have ever seen any lawyer do, and I tip my hat to her. Danielle Sassoon is somebody who I did not expect to become my hero. She and I have very different political views. She is a Federalist. She was a clerk to the late Justice Antonin Scalia. She is a dyed-in-the-wool conservative. She did not do what she did because of politics. She did this because of her adherence to the motto, the creed, and the mission of the Department of Justice. So moving one step forward, this is important because everybody in the Department of Justice needs to know that the prosecutions will move forward without fear or favor. When I was an AUSA, I asked FBI agents, DE agents, others to go in the line of duty into danger, face possible death.
Yeah, Trump's goddamn New York trial was wild, dude. The shit that they kept telling him to shut the fuck up, and he wouldn't, over and over again, calling out family members and shit. Like, clearly he was setting a precedent there.
And they needed to know that the cases that they put together would be prosecuted or not prosecuted based upon their strength, not based upon what the defendant knew, who the defendant could ask favors from. That is what we stood for. That is what the Department of Justice is always meant to stand for. That is what Danielle Sassoon stood up for. And that is under attack from Pam Bondi, Emile Beauvais, and what they are doing with regard to dismissing the charges against Mayor Adams. Now, We know that the decision not to pursue the charges against Mayor Adams has nothing to do with the underlying facts, because Emile Beauvais put that in the initial 8-page memo he sent demanding that the charges be dropped. And it is highly problematic that the demand was that the charges be dismissed with the possibility of them being reinstated in November after the results of the election were known for mayor.
So yeah, that checks out, unfortunately. We'll come back to Mitch about what's going to happen next in this case, but we still have a lot to get through. Beauvais gleefully accepted Sassoon's resignation, even though he didn't technically have authority to do so. Only Attorney General Pam Bondi did. Beauvais' praise for the prosecutors and their integrity evaporated when he read Sassoon's resignation letter. He fired back.
So they praised them, right? They praised them and said, oh, I have nothing wrong with the investigation or that department, and this doesn't like besmirch the investigation or them in any way. Not after they said they wouldn't do it.
Back accusing her of continuing to pursue a politically motivated prosecution. He accused her of betraying her oath despite express instructions to dismiss the case, and said she lost sight of her oath by disagreeing with, quote, the policies of a democratically elected president and a Senate-confirmed attorney general. Now, reminder for all the attorneys out there, no matter how much you like a president's policies or not, they do not override your ethical obligations as a lawyer. The ends don't justify the means of something. Now, Beauvais defended his actions by referring to Trump's executive order, quote, the weaponization finding in my February 10th, 2025 memorandum was made pursuant to a policy set forth by President Trump, who is the only elected official in the executive branch, in connection with a decision that was authorized by the Senate-confirmed Attorney General of the United States and entirely consistent with guidance issued by the Attorney General shortly after that confirmation. Your office has no authority to contest the weaponization finding or the second independent basis requiring dismissal set forth in my memorandum. The Justice Department will not tolerate the insubordination and apparent misconduct reflected in the approach that you and your office may have taken in this matter. Beauvais again accused former U.S. Attorney Damon Williams of making incendiary statements about Mayor Adams, which apparently demonstrated bias and prejudiced the jury pool. That Williams, quote, launched a personal website which closely resembles a campaign website that touts articles about the ongoing prosecution of Mayor Adams with titles such as U.S. Attorney Damon Williams has come for the Kings, a mayor, a rapper, a senator, a billionaire, meet the man who has prosecuted them all, and former prosecutor Damon Williams flexes SDNY power against Eric Adams and Sean Combs. And also said that reviewing the voluminous evidence against Adams would burden the mayor's ability to run a campaign and do his job. Quote, in October 2024, an AUSA responsible for the prosecution of Mayor Adams represented that the first batch of discovery in the case included about 560 gigabytes of data. Thus, as a trial date was negotiated, Mayor Adams was faced with an impossible choice between seeking to defend himself at a pre-election trial and in the hopes that he could campaign based on exoneration and taking a reasonable amount of time to review the discovery and prepare his defense at a post-election trial. His acquiescence in the former option does not justify your office's decision. And this is exactly the sort of thing that Beauvais wrote when he was Trump's defense lawyer. That there's so much evidence of criminality he won't have time to be mayor is not quite the poem that Beauvais thinks it is. Finally, your suggestion that President Trump should issue a pardon to Mayor Adams instead of dropping the prosecution reveals your office's insubordination is little more than a preference to avoid a duty that you regard as unpleasant and politically inconvenient. Your oath to uphold the Constitution does not permit you to substitute your policy judgment for that of the president or senior leadership of the Justice Department, and you are in no position to suggest that the president exercises exclusive Article 2 authority to make your job easier. Beauvais then listed all the activities that Adams allegedly can't do because he's under indictment, such as communicated candidly with city officials and federal agencies. Now, I probably don't need to mention that there is no evidence that Mayor Adams can't coordinate with local and federal officials, and more importantly, none of these woes are the problems of
course he can coordinate. Jesus Christ.
Of the U.S. attorneys. If Adams can't perform his duties because he's on trial,
he's coordinating to get this fucking, basically a pardon. Conditional pardons.
Then he can resign. And in any event, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton was under indictment for 9 years and still managed to do all the things that he wanted to do, like prosecuting New York doctors for prescribing abortion pills and suing immigrants' rights groups for political speech. Now, once they accepted Sassoon's resignation, the DOJ reportedly asked John Keller, acting chief of the Public Integrity Section, or PIN, in Washington, D.C., to step in and carry out the order. He refused and also resigned. They then turned to the acting head of the criminal division, Ken Driscoll. He refused and resigned. And according to NBC News, at least 3 more senior attorneys in the PIN have resigned rather than carry out an order that they believed was corrupt, including at least 3 and maybe all 4 of the deputies in charge of PIN. Hagan Scotton, who clerked for Supreme Court Justices John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh when he was on the D.C. Circuit, sent an absolutely scathing resignation letter. He said Beauvais wrote him a letter rebuking him for refusing to dismiss the case. Scotton says no one ever asked him to file a motion, but if they had, he absolutely would have refused. Scotton described himself as someone who is sympathetic to Trump's objectives. However, quote, any assistant U.S. attorney would know that our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials in this way.
This is the most scathing letter, I think, right? He finally says, if no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, saying that you're not allowed to do this, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion. But it was never going to be me.
If no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion. But it was never going to be me. That is perhaps the most fire-breathing resignation letter I have ever seen from an attorney. And he also pulled no punches in backing up Sassoon's substantive points as well. Quote, in short, the first justification for the motion, that Damon Williams' role in the case somehow tainted a valid indictment supported by ample evidence and pursued under 4 different U.S. attorneys, is so weak as to be transparently pretextual. The second justification is worse. No system of ordered liberty can allow the government to use the carrot of dismissing charges or the stick of threatening to bring them again to induce an elected official to support its policy objectives. And it's worth mentioning that Scott was a captain in the Army Special Forces.
It's bad, dude. We're just, yeah, this guy was Special Forces soldier. But yeah, how long are we into this presidency? And this is the stuff that they're doing out in the open. Remember last fucking presidency, his last fucking term, where everything came out from leaks and this. Imagine what's going to come out in the leaks.
Allow the government to use the carrot of dismissing charges or the stick of threatening to bring them again to induce an elected official to support its policy objectives. And it's worth mentioning that Scott was a captain in the Army Special Forces and served 2 tours in Iraq and earned 2 Bronze Stars. And following these high-profile resignations, Bondi and Beauvais went completely Squid Games. Former U.S. Attorney Barb McQuaid reported
They went Squid Games. They pulled everybody into a room and said somebody's doing it or everybody's fired. You can't do this. This is why there are separate branches of the government and they check each other. Because the president can't send his guys in to meet with all the fucking people in the Justice Department and say, do this or you're fired.
The quote, DOJ leadership has put all public integrity section lawyers into a room with 1 hour to decide who will dismiss Adams' indictment or else all will be fired. Sitting
1 hour to decide who's going to do it or everybody else will be fired. Everybody will be fired.
strength to stand by their oath, which is to support the Constitution, not the president's political agenda. This was the Attorney General of the United States threatening to fire an entire section of the Department of Justice, in particular the one charged with investigating public corruption, if they didn't sign a document that was going to risk their law licenses. But eventually Bondi and Beauvais found two people who will probably forever be labeled as a fool and a coward. Antoinette Bacon, a member of the Federalist Society, who they apparently pulled from Florida for this, and Ed Sullivan, a senior lawyer at Penn, who reportedly volunteered to save the jobs of the other lawyers at Penn who would otherwise have been fired. And
so one they had to pull out of Florida, and one of them that felt like he was trying to save everybody else's jobs.
why didn't Bondi or Beauvais file the motions on their own? Well, they absolutely could have done that, but they wanted to flex their power and
They could have filed the motions. They could have filed the motions. Bondi or Beauvais could have filed them. But they need this separation. Like, well, we didn't do it, right? The prosecutors involved in that did it. Trump could have pardoned him.
They wanted a U.S. attorney to legitimize the decision to drop the case. When Sassoon said that the president should have instead used his pardon power, she was arguing that if he did, public perception would have been that the deal was simply a corrupt quid pro quo handed down by the top executive. So that's why they really wanted a U.S. attorney to file the motion. But now that Sassoon has effectively blown the whistle, filing this dismissal document is a hot potato for anyone's legal ethics. As far as we know, at this time, at least 6 U.S. attorneys have resigned, and a large section of the public integrity section has also resigned. That is at least 3 times as many who quit.
Yeah, so it's 6 or some people earlier said 7 U.S. attorneys, but a group of people that are supposed to be looking out for this fucking corruption and shit also resigned. They're not attorneys, right?
Potato for anyone
that work in the office.
As far as we know, at this time, at least 6 U.S. attorneys have resigned, and a large section of the public integrity section has also resigned. That is at least 3 times as many who quit during the Saturday Night Massacre during the Nixon administration. And that purge actually triggered Nixon's impeachment. But in 2025, well,
nothing. Silence. Fucking cowards. Cowards. They're all afraid that they'll be the next target of Trump's rant or investigation or imprisonment or Elon Musk funding somebody to run against you. They're fucking cowards, dude. You know how much of Congress is, even on the Republican side, are fucking lawyers that know this isn't allowed? They used to be prosecutors. They used to work for the Justice Department. Not a word, not a peep.
So what happens now? They have filed their request for dismissal, but Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 48A says that, quote, the government may, with leave of court, dismiss an indictment, information, or complaint. So a federal judge
may
can refuse a prosecutor's motion for leave of court to dismiss a criminal indictment, but only under limited circumstances. And I asked Mitch Epner what he thought would happen here.
I want to move forward to the next big actor in this, and that is Judge Dale Ho. If Emile Beauvais himself or find somebody at the Department of Justice to make the motion to dismiss, that motion will be presented to the trial judge, Dale Ho. I had the great fortune to work with Judge Ho when we were both near the beginning of our careers at a firm called Fried Frank. I've remained friendly with Judge Ho since then, until he took the bench. I know nothing about what Judge Ho thinks about this case. I do know that I've always greatly respected and admired him, his honesty, and his incorruptibility. Judge Ho is going to have a big choice. He could either rubber stamp the request from the DOJ, or he could ask the hard questions. Danielle Sassoon has predicted that Judge Ho will ask the hard questions, and I think that it is highly likely that she is correct.
Put them under oath and make them put it on paper, right? Make a record of this. Don't just do it. Put them under oath, even if you plan on doing it. Even if you plan on doing it, because it's kind of, it's not unprecedented. It's happened before to like force them to prosecute. And not allow them to dismiss, but at least get it written down.
I'm quite confident that if Judge Ho asks the hard questions, the DOJ and Emile Beauvais will have no good answers. And the reason we know they have no good answers is the 2 letters that Emile Beauvais wrote are internally inconsistent, they are contradictory, and they make it clear that Danielle Sassoon is right on the law and they are wrong. Now, what can Judge Ho do if he thinks that this is...
I did see something about senior deputies or whatever. I don't really know the way the New York City mayor office is structured, but whatever senior deputies are.
A wrongful attempt to terminate. There are two things he could do. One is highly unlikely. The second is something that's pretty clearly within his powers. The highly unlikely thing he could do is insist that the DOJ move forward with the prosecution. As far as I know, that's happened once in the past decades. Danielle Sassoon cited that case.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's not going to affect them. It's all fucking us, right? But you'd think one of them would have the balls to say, you know, I'm a fucking multi-millionaire. What can they really do to me, right? I could have security at my mansion for the rest of my life. What do they do to me, even if I lose?
Case in her letter, it's very rare. The thing that he could more easily do is he could deny the request to dismiss.
So this is unlikely. It has happened before, but he could technically force them to proceed, like not accept their dismissal or their motion to dismiss.
The case without prejudice, meaning deny the DOJ the opportunity to refile these charges at some later time and require them to make a choice. Do they want to move forward now, or do they want to dismiss these claims forever? That is something
that's better, right? Say, okay, well, we'll accept your dismissal with prejudice. We're not doing it without prejudice, so you can bring this back if he doesn't, you know, bend to your will. We'll do the dismissal, but you've got to, I mean, that's better than nothing.
that is very clearly within his jurisdiction, and frankly not particularly controversial. It would, however, put Judge Ho in the center of the MAGA media storm. I want to sort of wrap up by thinking for a moment of what does it do for Danielle Sassoon to stand up and say no, and if he does, for Judge Ho to ask the hard questions. It doesn't prevent the particular harm. It is likely that these charges will be dismissed one way or the other. It is an act of faith in the system. It is an act of faith that by shining a spotlight, acting as a speed bump, they will draw attention from U.S. citizens who will say this is wrong and that it will not continue. Even if the charges against Judge Adams end up being dismissed, that there will be a price to pay because this sort of misconduct is not consistent with the ethics or the mission of the Department of Justice. So I think back to the first Star Wars movie, when Obi-Wan Kenobi realized that he no longer had the strength to beat Darth Vader in a duel, and he knew he was about to be killed. And he turns off his lightsaber and he meets his fate, saying to Darth Vader, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. It is quite a sad day for justice in America. It's a sad day for the Department of Justice. And I am only thankful that I've been given this opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.
So it's hard to say what's going to happen next. I suspect Judge Ho will want to ask some very hard questions, maybe hold a contempt hearing, which he should. My hope is that he puts people under oath and at the very least creates a clear record. A clear record including putting one or more of the attorneys under oath, especially Emile Beauvais. You'll note that the Rule 48 motion for dismissal that Bacon, Sullivan, and Beauvais signed and filed with the court was very carefully written to put the onus on Beauvais. It places the action very carefully, like, quote, the acting Deputy Attorney General has determined and directed. The acting Deputy Attorney General concluded that dismissal is necessary because the acting Deputy Attorney General also concluded that continuing these proceedings would interfere. So yeah, bring him and potentially AG Bondi into the court and make them make those representations under oath. Though I expect after this, they might just welcome a dismissal with prejudice just to get out of it. But this is a mess. It is a black eye for the Department of Justice and for the rule of law. It is one of the most corrupt, craven, lawless, and politically weaponized uses of the Department of Justice since Watergate. It's almost as bad as how data brokers use your private information for their own benefit, which you can fight with today's sponsor, Incogni. I'm really sorry. Our sponsors help make videos like this possible, especially on a student.
There you go. There's a sponsor then.
And actually a good service. And it's especially important now that the
It's terrifying what they're already doing to the systems in place, dude. Like, it's terrifying. And these retards running around, they still think that they're going to get fucking, oh, well, I did it because the price of groceries coming down. What about no tax on tips? Fucking idiots. All right. I want to, before I go, I've got to finish early because I got court in the morning. By the way, so I went full autistic on my court case coming up. And I wrote how many pages is this? I think it's like 30 or 26. I wrote a 26-page manifesto from start to finish of everything that's going on in court. So tomorrow, if court goes the way I think it's going to go tomorrow, we're going to do when I come into the office tomorrow, which will be earlier in the evening, I don't know, 7 or 8, we're going to do a Patreon show and go over this from start to finish. You guys can know where it stands and what's going on and how court turned out. And then I'll update everybody else on court. But all levels of Patreon tomorrow, if you're interested in that. If you're not, that's cool. But we're going to go over this manifesto, the court documents. Then let me introduce you to I've been involved in farmers wars over on TikTok. So remember this guy who's losing his ranch or whatever, and he voted for Trump? He's like, I didn't know. It didn't affect me. Blah, 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 blah. That guy. It is a manifesto. I want you guys to report that to the news. next time you see me on the news, say, I know he had a manifesto. Here's the link. Anyways, this guy's pretty good, okay? He's a centrist. One thing that he talks about that I like to talk about is how they've convinced the right wing that these culture war issues somehow affect them, right? It's not about, feeding and poor and subsidies and farmers and manufacturing. It's about, oh my God, there could be a trans person in the bathroom. It's wild how they convince them. This guy is named Will Westmoreland, and he's involved in Farmer Wars on TikTok, and we're going to watch some of his videos here because I think he puts a pretty good spin on most of it. But he talks about all things political. He's also a rancher, and he tried reaching out to the Scholar guy. By the way, the Scholar guy is kind of weird. He wants to start this weird school on his own farm. Like, if you go look at his Facebook, it's a lot different. He wants to start this single-room schoolhouse thing that's homeschooling, but it doesn't fall under homeschooling. I don't know. That guy's weird. But anyways, Will Westmoreland, here we go.
Farmers and ranchers around the country are waiting with bated breath to see if the Trump administration is going to release critically needed funds that were set aside to help farmers and ranchers improve their operations around the country. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Back 40. My name's Will, and let's talk about it. Recently, I did a video speaking to a young rancher about the many dominoes that have fallen over the last 40 years that have led to rural America, for the most part, voting against its best interest. But I've been waiting to see how our local politicians would respond to the actions of the Trump administration, actions that are critically harming farmers and ranchers in our state. Now, any of you that have watched my videos know that I don't lose my temper very often, but I've got to be honest with you. What I saw today gave me what my grandpa would have called a case of the serious red ass.
But it's all going to work out. Right now, it's a little bit disruptive, but that's what this administration promised whenever they were coming to Washington.
For those of you that don't know, that's Jason Smith, and he's a Republican congressman from the state of Missouri. I guess when you've got a guaranteed government paycheck and 3 squares a day that you know are never going to end, it's easy to lob a turd into another man's punch bowl. Well, Jason, I've got a few things to say to you. When a farmer or rancher is facing the loss of their family farm or ranch because they spent money that the federal government promised that they were going to reimburse, it's all going to work out is not the policy response that they're looking for.
By the way, this is all about the EQIP program and the only reason it stopped is because this freeze, and it's because of Biden law. It's a good thing, right? We do like fencing and conservation efforts and stuff at farms to make them where they're not so environmentally damaging. It's stuff that farmers typically couldn't afford, right? But we tell the farmers, if you make these improvements, we'll pay you back. So the farmers take their own money, make these conservation style improvements, and then they show proof that it's been completed, and the government gives them their money back.
Jason, maybe some of you rural Congress people haven't spent enough time in your district lately, because you should know that in rural America, when we make a promise, we do everything to keep it, especially in the farming and ranching industry. And when a farmer plants his crop in the spring, he's asked to sign a contract to buy his seed. He's asked to sign a contract to buy his fertilizer. All throughout the year, he's asked to sign a contract for the inputs he needs to keep pests and weeds out of his crop. And in the end, he's asked to sign a contract to determine what price his commodities will sell for. Over and over again, the American farmer and rancher is asked to sign a piece of paper that requires him or her to keep their word, no matter what. And the consequences not only mean the difference between profit and loss, they can mean the difference between keeping or losing your family farm. So by
the way, Trump talks shit sometimes about small farmers. Like, Trump wants industrial farms.
Question to any politician right now supporting these policies of the Trump administration is simply this. Why do we as American citizens, especially as farmers and ranchers, have to live by a different set of rules than you do? Why are we asked to keep our commitment and our word when you're not doing the same thing for us? Now, rural America, I want to say something directly to you, and I hope you'll listen with an open mind. As I've said many times before, I'm not asking any of you to admit that you were wrong. I'm just asking you to admit that you were lied to. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again now, rural America. Our focus on the culture wars have led to us not electing politicians that stand up for the best interest of rural America. And it's also prevented us from holding accountable the very politicians like Congressman Smith who made promises to rural America that they're breaking right now as we speak. Fighting the culture wars for the politicians in Washington, D.C. and the crooked televangelists on television all over this country doesn't do a single thing to build a fence on our farms and ranches. It doesn't do a single thing to build a stock tank on our farms and ranches. It doesn't do a single thing to improve the quality of the soil on our farms and ranches. And it doesn't do a single thing to keep our kids at home once they graduate from college to carry on the Lord's work of farming our farms and ranches. Now, rural America, here's your last history lesson for the day. There was a time in this country where the Midwest, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, Iowa, all throughout the Midwest, we were a hotbed of liberal, progressive farmer activism in this country. We knew the difference between the gilded tower and the farmhouses and sod houses that we all lived in. We knew who was looking out for us and who was fighting for our best interests. And
by the way, when he said gilded tower there, that reminds me about the Gilded Age. Trump keeps talking about going back to the Gilded Age because we were the wealthiest we've ever been. You know that gilded means like something with a thin coat of like a precious metal on top, right? Thin gold leaf, like a thin coat, because the people that were rich were the ultra rich, and the poor had never been fucking poorer. So when he's talking about returning to the Gilded Age of America, he's literally telling people that the ultra rich will be ultra rich, even richer, and everybody else will be poorer. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, even the word gilded means like this thin line of gold and everything else is fucking lead or brass or something else.
Over time, these culture wars and the lies that we've been told as a result of these culture wars have caused us to lose sight of the issues that are really important to us. And that's fairness in farming and ranching. It's the ability to control better than we can now.
The definition, the second definition, the first one says covered or highlighted with gold or some other golden color. The second definition says having a pleasing or showy appearance that conceals something of little worth. So I don't know if I'd be preaching we're going back to the Gilded Ages.
Cost of inputs, the cost of what we sell our products for, and more control over the entire process itself. Many of you probably don't know that farmers used to march in the streets in the cities in Kansas and Missouri and Iowa and Nebraska to stand up against the oligarchies of their day that were forcing them to live like paupers on their own farms. It's time for us to do that again. There's no doubt about it in my mind, and we have to do that together, regardless of political ideology or political persuasion. So now is the time, while tough decisions are being made for us by politicians who intend not to keep their word, for us to make our own tough decisions ourselves. Are we going to put the culture wars behind us and to begin to vote for politicians that understand rural policies and will keep their word when they make a promise to us as farmers and ranchers? I hope so, because without it, it's only going to get worse. And in the end, we're going to have a country whose landscape is covered by corporate farms owned by
robber barons, exactly.
And my friends, if that happens, the epitaph on the tombstone covering the graves of all of the small farms and ranches in the United States of America will simply read, "You were warned and you chose not to listen." Have a great day. Farmers and ranchers around the country are waiting with bated breath to see if...
Okay, I just went through the hurricane and shit, and like my house was floating away. It destroyed all my shit, fucked up vehicles, took all my tools and shit. I've never in my life even fucking seen a trans person in real life. Like they're not just hanging out behind every bush here. Do you think I was worried about fucking who's using what bathroom? But these motherfuckers, like this other farmer that we're talking about, the Schuyler guy, was like, well, I didn't know, but you know, some of that trans stuff is getting out of control. What the fuck, dude? The government just shorted you $200,000 and you're like, well, what about those trans people? It's wild they got you to worry about the culture war so much. It doesn't...
Also, everybody says in the comments, Project 2025, didn't you read that? That's his platform.
Hey, Skylar, my name's Will Westmoreland, and I'm a farmer down in Southwest Missouri. And I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you that I am not an FAFO kind of guy. We probably disagree with each other on everything political, but there's a very specific reason why people are getting upset with you, and I wanted to explain that to you if you'd be willing to listen to an older guy kind of walk you through the process. Now, I'm not an FAFO guy.
To be fair, I might have seen a trans person before that was like super passing or whatever, but I mean, it's not something that's on my mind ever. And I know that most of these fucking backwards, fucking small town hateful people are the exact same way because I live like they live. I see them in my own fucking town.
Because I know what's going to happen to poor people, the elderly, children, single moms, and over 250 million people every night around the world that go to bed hungry if the American farmer and rancher is run out of business because of Trump's policies. And that's what I want to explain to you tonight if you'll listen to me. I also wanted to let you know I sent you a private message. And if you ever want to get on the phone and you want to talk about the issues that Trump is forwarding that are bad for agriculture, I'd be willing to do that, and I'd be willing to listen to your...
I do like this guy's theory. I know it feels very good to rub it in somebody's face and the fuck around find out face. But this guy's stance is you don't have to admit that you were wrong. Just admit that you were lied to. That's step one, right? Because when you push at them and the fuck around and you found out, they just get more defensive, blah, blah, blah. We'll never have their support. but I think they're going to hurt a lot. I think it's going to hurt a lot of them, and they'll keep making excuses. Oh, well, that was an accident. I saw one guy that is a disabled vet, a double fucking amputee in Texas. His wife got a job based on his preference with the VA. She had worked there for like 9 years as a nurse at the VA hospital. She got a promotion that moved her from one place in Texas to another place in Texas, like 4 hours away. They had already sold their previous house they were living in. They were in a rental in their previous city and fixing to move to the new city where her new job took off. There was like a month that she wasn't working. Right? They were in Airbnb. Her job got fucking shut down because of the hiring freeze. They just eliminated that new position. She can't have her old position. It's already been filled. New position is gone. He gets on social media and says, I know this cut affected me by accident. He's a fucking double amputee. His wife works at the VA. I know this cut affected me by accident. I know you weren't coming for me or my wife's job. I know you weren't trying to affect good, hardworking Americans like us, but it did, and I'm just wondering if you could fix it. He was coming for you all along, you fucking retard.
Their arguments as well. I also want to let you know that I've been a political consultant for over 30 years. I want to be right up front about that. I do that in addition to farming. And I want you to know, a lot of younger people don't know, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but more of an educational way. A lot of younger people don't know that right-wing talk radio and news, the pundits, the talking heads, and right-wing talk radio, et cetera, have been working for over 40 years to develop in rural people exactly the kinds of ideas that you have in your head, that all politicians are crooks, that they're all the same, that you can't trust traditional media, that anything you hear that comes out of Washington, D.C. or New York or the New York Times or CBS News, that it's all a lie. And they did this on purpose, and they started with Ronald Reagan. We used to have what's called a fairness doctrine in this country, where if you were a radio station or a television station and you were using the public airwaves to present a message, we had a fairness doctrine where you were required by law to share the other side of the story. And President Ronald Reagan, who was president when I was in...
Got rid of the fairness doctrine. You didn't have to have equal amounts of time. Like, you could spend 30 minutes on the right-wing version of it and 5 minutes on the left wing, but you had to report on both sides of a story. That's been gone for a while.
A little bit younger than that, had the fairness doctrine eliminated. He had it taken out of the books. And there was a specific reason for that. It was designed so that organizations like Fox News and right-wing talk radio...
Listen, years ago, they wanted to figure out how to get the right, or the South to vote Republican. And it was based on race, right? They were upset about the segregation or the desegregation, the blacks in the schools, and fucking civil rights, right? They were upset about that. But they knew they just couldn't come out and say, hey, don't you want all those black people out of your school? Instead, they made these culture war issues like abortion and religious issues, and they took that and amplified and have just basically, they've been given, like, Tennessee will never vote blue anytime soon. So they can just bank that in their pocket. They don't give a fuck about what happens to us in Tennessee, because what are we going to do?
Radio could start spreading the lie that all mainstream media was bad. Now, this was during the time of Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather, all the other news heads that we had out there that were highly respected. But it was a strategy to make it so that the airwaves no longer had to present an unbiased case. And then these right-wing media sources like Rush Limbaugh and Fox News, et cetera, began pouring it on to rural America. You can't trust politicians. You can't trust the news. And what they did is they focused on destroying the trust in these institutions so that they could replace it with another institution. And they did that. They replaced it with Fox News. They replaced it with right-wing talk radio. And I can't tell you how many times when I was growing up, when I was your age, I'd walk into a job site or be on a farm and I would hear right-wing talk radio blaring on the radio all day long. And then after they had destroyed our faith in media institutions in rural America, they then turned their guns toward the government itself. And they began building in us a distrust of government organizations. And Skylar, here's the facts, okay? You can look this up on your own, but these are the facts. Rural America uses more welfare than the blue cities do. Rural America needs more help feeding our children. We need more help keeping our hospitals open. And guys like you and I, farmers out there that grow row crops or do agroforestry,
we're going to be hurt worse by this.
We take welfare too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because we can't control the cost of our inputs. We can't control the cost of what we sell our products for. We got to pay for shipping both ways, as Kennedy said. But the reality of the situation is they were able to instill in us the idea that the government money coming to us was okay and was a good thing, but the government money going everywhere else was a scam or a sham or communistic or socialistic, etc. So it reached a fever pitch finally where a lot of rural people, over 70% of rural farmers and ranchers, only believe the Fox Newses and the talk radio. And when they came to you and told you that Trump wasn't going to implement Project 2025 and that he didn't have anything to do with it, you believe that. And you're not alone. All I'm here to tell you is that you were lied to. I'm not asking you to admit you were wrong. I'm not telling you effed around and found out, because I don't want to see you lose your farm. And if there's anything I can do to help you not lose your farm, I'd be happy to do it. But in the distrust that you built up for government over time, and due to the fact that you didn't think mainstream media was reliable anymore, and you began listening to the news sources that tried to convince you every day that Project 2025 was not a Trump deal, even though many, many people on his campaign worked for Project 2025, they put it together, they helped write it. There was an entire section on agriculture. And in that section on agriculture, they specifically say they're going to cut out programs like this. Then they're going to cut out crop insurance. And Donald Trump is on record, my friend. And Skylar, look this up. Don't take anything I'm telling you at face value. You look it up. That's the difference between me and a lot of people on here. Check what I've said. Make sure I'm not lying to you. But Donald Trump is on record saying that corporate farming is better than small family farms and ranches. And Skylar, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to corporatize agriculture. And I'm not talking about when you and I go out and put together an LLC so that we can get the tax benefits and the protections from liability that come with that. I'm talking about big ag corporations and Wall Street buying up family farms and ranches as they go out of business so that they can turn it into just another investment. In the last 10 years, we've broken every single record in regard to the number of farms and ranches being bought up by investment companies in the United States. And I'd be happy to share all of that data with you. But my friend, I think the worst thing that they did to us in rural America is they convinced us somehow to place the culture wars over our own well-being. And what do I mean by that? Brother, when I was young, you didn't care what anybody did in their bedroom. Gay, lesbian, trans, whatever. That was their life.
We don't care.
And the only
I don't give a fuck.
Changed was just to say that you can't discriminate against those people when you're hiring, and you can't commit acts of hate against them because they're different than you and I as heterosexual white men. That's all the law did. And Skylar, did you know that the Southern Baptist Convention, and I was a Southern Baptist for a long time, do you know that the Southern Baptist Convention had its own clauses in their charter that said that abortion was okay in the event that it saved the life of the mother or the child might be deformed? But it was political hacks in the religious Christian movement that came in and politicized the abortion topic in order to get folks like you and I in rural America to turn against it. So I'm not here to tell you FO, brother. I know how hard you work every day, and I know what you're trying to do for your family, because I'm doing the same thing. And you may listen to what I have to say, and you may just think this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But I hope you'll listen to it with an open mind, and I hope you'll double check and research what I've told you, because the truth of the matter is we've been lied to. So at this stage, I'm not even asking you to say you were wrong. I'm just asking you to admit that you were lied to. Trump was forwarding Project 2025. He just hired the guy to oversee cost and contracts in the federal government that wrote Project 2025. We were lied to, my friend. And nobody's going to judge you if you just admit that you were lied to, and you made decisions based on the fact that you thought these contracts were going to be kept and that you were lied to. And then the next step is get involved with us to fight back. It doesn't make you a Democrat. It doesn't make you a turncoat. It just means you see wrong when it occurs and you fight back against it. Anyway, I hope that makes sense, and have a great day.
Also, everybody says in the
Anyways, I like this guy's take on it.
Hey guys, it's Will.
He does a pretty good job. So follow him on TikTok if you want to. It's under Will Westmoreland. Will Westmoreland is all one word. Will Westmoreland. All right, guys. I've got to go to court tomorrow. If you want to check out the manifesto with me, that'll be a Patreon-only thing. I got to get back on Patreon. That's where some of my income comes that keeps the show running. So we'll do a Patreon show tomorrow, as long as court goes right. If for some reason it gets extended or put off or something like that, then I have to wait. But I'm ready to put this 26-page manifesto out there. But thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to go home and get some sleep. I'm being sued for saying mean things on the internet. Not only am I being sued for saying truthful things on the internet, my wife was sued originally, and then there's 2 temporary restraining orders against us, like a fucking battered woman from a guy that it's a whole story. But I haven't been able to talk much about it just because it's in court. But we go to court tomorrow to settle this once and for all. So I typed out everything that's taken place since November 1st up until today, and it's a pretty wild story. So I'll let you guys know how it goes tomorrow, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Have a good night. Love you. See you. Bye.
But I can tell you this.
Oh, support the stream at coldbeer.fund if you like the show, if you got something from it. That's how we keep the lights on. Thank you, guys.
This planet by name. And tell them exactly who they are, and tell them the rest of the world who they are. You don't have to.
Thank you for the happy birthday wishes. It was Saturday. My dad's birthday was yesterday. And tomorrow was my mom and dad's anniversary.
It's about to get lit. Get the place in the best. You know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go. I think I started some shit. Piss them off. It's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
And they say that I'm a lunatic. Well, listen, bitch, I came equipped with a quick wit and a 6th sense for the stupid shit. Where my true believers? Y'all need Jesus.
I'll say it again. Anybody who's against fucking kids-free lunches,
to profit,
never trust those motherfuckers. Never. Don't vote for them. Don't fucking like them. There's something wrong with people who won't feed fucking kids at school.
Your gut burst. I'll be your huckleberry. I can quench that thirst. Baby eating lizard people, alien sex. What's next? Trump in a dress, fucking Flynn on his desk. A retard in a vest, climbing up 5G towers. Cause you told him if he did, he'd get fucking superpowers.
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
I used to find clues too when I was high on shrooms. I found myself a tunnel that led to J.
Hell yeah, during COVID, they extended that shit through the summer. There was like a short bus that would come around with meals already prepared. And any kid that went to our school, they brought it to your house, like in a to-go box.
Put on a light coat of baby.
Gotta do that fucking year round. Some kids, that's the only fucking meal they get. Like what?
Whoa.
What's the argument here?
What? I'll get my files. What are you doing? Stop. Hold on. Fucking stop. Dude, come on. Seriously. This is arms and alcohol. Give me a... Oh my God. Damn it.
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
Round 3.
Good night, guys.